So now we're going to look at solving quadratics by taking the square root. So to solve a quadratic by taking the square root, first off, our quadratic equations are generally in standard form, which would be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that would be our standard form. However, we can't solve those by quadratics, but we can, or by taking the square root, but we can if we don't have this bx part. So if we have the form of ax squared plus c, we can solve these by taking that square root, because we don't have that middle b value. So when we have this x squared equals n, because what we're going to do is we're going to subtract our c over and then take the square root. And when we do that, we're going to get x equals a plus or minus.
Wait, that's what put in the blank?
That's square root of it. Yes. So this is our first blank. You can just say ax squared plus c equals 0. And then whenever we solve for it, we're going to get if x squared equals n. And we solve for x, we're going to get plus or minus square root of n. This plus or minus comes from the fact that when you take the square root, say we have 36. 36 is a perfect square.
So 6 times 6.
6 times 6 gets us 36. But we also have negative 6 times negative 6 gets us 36, right? 2 positives when they multiply together gets you, or 2 negatives when they multiply together get you a positive as well as the 2 positives. So whenever we take that square root with an equal sign, we always need to add in that plus or minus. We're going to get 2 answers every time. So the way this works, we want to solve these equations. We kind of have this 3-step process. Isolate your x squared. So get it by itself, take the square root of both sides. Simplify the radical as much as you can and make sure you place your plus and minus to indicate that we have those 2 answers, both a positive and a negative answer. So let's look at number 1. We have x squared equals minus 64. I'm jumping ahead. So x squared minus 64. So the first thing is we got to isolate that x squared on one side of the equation.
So add 64.
I'm going to add 64 over. X squared equals 64. And then we want to take that square root. So that is going to leave us with x equals, go ahead and put in my plus or minus. Square root of 64 would be 8.
Wait, that's the answer?
That's our answer.
So you put the plus or minus, so you don't have to like write it. Okay, I gotcha. That's so smart.
So then let's look at number 2. Number 2, we've got 7x squared plus 8 equals 15.
See, minus 8.
So subtract 8.
And then that gives you 7x squared equals 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let the square root of it.
Not quite.
Divide
Divide first.
Divide by 7. That gives you x squared equals 1. And then you square root it. And then you get x equals plus or minus 1.
Perfect. Okay. So again, solving by quadratics, isolate your x squared, do your addition, subtraction first, then do your division, and then take that square root, would be your last step, and simplify if you can.
Can we do number 9?
So let's look at number 9. We can do any of these. So number 9, we've got negative 1/2 x squared plus 1 equals negative 39. So first thing,
Minus 1.
minus 1. So that's going to give us both negative. become more negative, so minus 40. To get rid of the negative 1/2 in front of our x squared,
We gotta divide
divide it by the reciprocal.
it. 2 over 1.
Multiply. 2 over 1, or we can think of it as just negative 2, right? 2 divided by 1, we just get negative 2. So those cancel out on this side. We're left with x squared.
That's 20.
We're multiplying.
Oh, I thought we were dividing. Hold on.
But when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So
Oh my goodness. I got it. Go ahead. Continue.
So that gets us 80. Then we want to take the square root. So we get x equals plus or minus. Now we've got to split this, right? We want to simplify this down as much as we can. So this is exactly what we were just doing. We want to find the biggest perfect square and non-perfect square. So the biggest perfect square that goes into 80 would be the 16 multiplied by 16 and 5.
And then have to square root it again.
We'll take the square root of that 16. We get x equals plus or minus 4 square root of 5. Okay. Are there any others on there you want to look at?
I don't think so.
Nothing. So that's our solving quadratics by taking the square roots. Again, the hard part, usually the part that tricks up the most people, is that simplifying at the end and leaving off your plus and minus. So make sure you always do those two things. You should be good.